Welcome. This is David Boles' Human Meme. Today's topic, PoetPourri, Marshall Jamison poetry. Welcome to the final installment of the Marshall Jamison Poetry Slam, here in Human Meme. Please visit humanmeme.com and search for Marshall Jamison to discover his other works that we've read in this podcast. When Marshall Jamison was retired to Florida, I would call him every day. And every day I called him, it was raining in Fort Myers. But by the time we finished our phone call, Marshall would tell me, talking to me brought out the sun. That mattered. Oh, and Marshall also called me often. And one day, he saved my life. Go to bolesblogs.com and do a search for attempting death to read that story. Incidentally, first published December 5, 1996. Just down the long block from storied Harvard Square, in a tired old building up a well-worn stair, practiced a dentist my trusting mother thought was great. But at 8, I withheld even skeptical approval until perhaps a later date. He pointed out to my mother and me pridefully that right across the street stood the Widener Library, pride of Harvard's true elite. The overwhelming edifice seemed to almost reach the sky. Brick, cement, and mortar filled my wide and staring eye. When I sat shivering in his ancient patient's chair, nervous, suspicious, alarmed, and hating to be there. So for a dozen years or so, this fumbling, well-meaning chap tried to improve our relationship as he drilled, filled, and cemented in my mouth with only an occasional slip. Then the day came when he greeted me with a sly, dry, but excited grin, and reported the startling news to me, "Your wisdom teeth have at last grown in." He continued with these excited shouts, "You know, my boy, you'll have to have those extremely long fangs out." That's when I should have recalled my early boyhood's doubt. Instead, 6 months of unending pain, a very hurtful bout, until that lout finally pulled and got those molars out. I wondered when I got his total final charge for the very rough and tough extraction, why it had taken so long for me to remember my very first gut reaction. So now no more ancient dentist chair, no more the Widener view. Even my mother now agrees those things we will eschew. Donuts! November 27, 1996. Mrs. Eaton made donuts for breakfast for Orrin and me. I loved her donuts, and so did he. Orrin was a big man, a sailing man, just home from the sea, and I was a tad who climbed on his knee. Between us two, who ate the most? Well, after a dozen or more, he had French toast. One Day in Harvard Yard, originally published in David Boles' blogs, November 5, 1996. At about 10 years of age or so, I heard Robert Frost recite his poetry aloud, for what it seemed to me to be a most attentive and respectful crowd. In Harvard Yard, a meeting place of those who search for knowledge, the brick-lined Mecca that surrounds much of Harvard College. He read quickly without emphasis that might have been revealing, and his words belied emotion which I thought he must be feeling. When he finished his last bucolic rhyme, something about a sick cow in apple time that ate his apples, which it seemed were green. I recall that he shivered, bowed quickly, and hastily left the scene, to be recognized later as the poet sublime, dreamer, doer, the complete master of meter and rhyme. On Climbing the Stairs, August 29, 1996. Listening for the sound of a well-remembered rhyme, my father always whispered aloud as he paused before the climb, up the stairs to the attic, to wish me soft good night, and say the prayer he taught me by the candle's flickering light. I recall well it promised joy and sweet relief of pain, and it answered all my doubts as I heard it again and again. For I knew if he believed it surely must be so, and for 60 years its message has shown me how to go. Up the attic stairs to the memories of my youth, to give my little grandson my father's living truth. PoetPourri, August 10, 1996. Our father loved the gripping verse of poet Alfred Noyes, and often read The Highwayman to us as little boys. We shivered as we listened to the rough night rider's plight, were excited and enchanted by the poet's clear insight. John Greenleaf Whittier shared with us blessed inward joys. Quickly he passed us, laughing barefoot boys. Then, in what we thought was a happy circumstance, our family moved a block or two from the tall yellow manse of the former Cantabrigian Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, for whom all was ended now, the hope, the fear, and the sorrow. And so, although the master poet was no longer there, it seemed that he had left for all treasures we might share. Share them we did with widening eyes and an eager new-found store of knowledge of a mighty ship built in those exciting days of yore. It sails on, even now, so independent, strong, and great, triumphant, immortal, the Union, our own ship of state. That dream realized, first nurtured and shared by our gallant forefathers, country folk, who somehow dared to answer the challenge of freedom's call from behind each fence and farmyard wall, as reported by the poet who described it all, for those of us who still hold dear the midnight message of Paul Revere, and find in such rich and glorious rhyme reading joy to grace a lifetime. A Cambridge Education, June 16, 1996. My brother and I had golden curls when we were 5 or 6, and we fell in love with Radcliffe girls, who, I suppose, responded just for kicks. For us, the dove of love flew high just this side of heaven, but all that ended when we reached the advanced age of 7. Not only were our curls cut then, but the girls discovered Harvard men. A Boyhood Memory. Published May 15th, 1996. He watched the gray gull he had shot with his new air rifle hobble away from the milk-soaked bread he'd guiltily prepared after his mother had quietly made him feel rotten because he'd broken his birthday promise never to shoot at any living thing. For days he held his reluctant captive very carefully, as he fed it with increasing success on bread, milk, and finally meat. The day he released his patient, the bird shook itself, preened its gray feathers, stretched its wings and flew into the sea wind, free. And, young as he was, he knew the sharp pain of rejection. Thank you for listening. Be a human, me.